Welcome to Retro Groove. Enjoy your voyage.
Howdy, and welcome to Retro Groove. I'm Adam.
And I'm Liam.
And this is a podcast where we talk about music that stands the test of time. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 11 of our second season of Retro Groove. Getting pretty close to closing out the year here. Hope your holiday season is off to a rip-roaring start. We have a special guest today from one of our sister podcasts, the FilmLogic podcast. Tim, how you doing, sir?
Yay! There's my best Kermit the Frog impression.
Yay! That was actually really good.
We'll do our best Muppet impressions later, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, how you doing, man? What's going on with you lately?
I'm definitely probably more in the spirit now than I was right after Thanksgiving for Christmas because of holiday shopping.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I am very happy, especially after watching some holiday movies, getting you in the spirit too. So
yes,
definitely.
Have you started putting up the decorations already, Tim? Like, is it all up yet?
Oh,
I see
it's
some
all
stuff
done.
Behind you. Yeah,
It was done the Thanksgiving weekend for sure. That
Yeah,
Friday.
nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's when I do
definitely.
Black Friday. It becomes, green and red Friday.
That's great. Yeah, my daughter has asked me. She's like, because we're watching Christmas movies and we're talking about Christmas and we're opening Advent calendars, and she's like, "Is it Christmas already?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it basically is. Like,
All month
what's
long.
Christmas? Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're gonna get presents, but like, we're gonna do this other stuff too. Yeah.
Right?
It all melds together, and it's just a big, beautiful season. That's how we do it anyway. It's like
Same.
we usually have the tree up before Thanksgiving. It's just all part of the same mishmash of traditions and hanging out with family and all of that good stuff. So it's just an awesome time of year. So today we are discussing, I know that Liam and I have talked about it a couple of times
Yeah.
on the podcast, but one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time, unapologetically, unequivocally, is the Muppet Christmas Carol.
So good.
So, Tim, where does the Muppet Christmas Carol fall for you in terms of like best Christmas movies of all time?
I don't have a number on it because they're all number one. All
That's
my
tough to
favorites.
do. That sounds
so-
like me. I'm terrible at ranking things.
Yeah.
but it is in the rotation for the Christmas holidays for sure.
Which is weird
Absolutely.
because it's not often in the rotation on, like, I don't know what cable is. Like, we have Sling that we watch like live TV on, and it's not like on like A Christmas Story's on or National Lampoon or anything like that. It doesn't
It's not
get
on freeform.
that.
Everything's on freeform.
I know, right? I don't see it on there, so I have to
Well,
go
that's
seek
crazy.
it out every year. Yeah,
Right.
Probably
Yeah.
because it's owned by Disney.
yeah, you're probably right.
Yep.
They don't want to lend their stuff out to anybody.
Yeah.
But we do have Disney Plus now. So
That's
that's a plus.
And so that was good.
Ba-dums.
So we were looking at this, and it's the 30th anniversary of this movie that means
Yes.
a lot to us. And we have a podcast on this network that covers film. Tim also Nintendo Dad number 4 as well. So he's
All right.
he wears a lot of hats around the podcast scene. So we're excited to have him with us today. So Tim, do you recall where you first saw this, or like any sort of history with this? Did you see it like when you were super young, or is it something you found later on?
Well, it was something that I definitely had on VHS.
Mm.
So I don't recall if I saw it in the theaters, as we were talking about pre-show.
Yeah.
Like I thought I did, but you made a point of something that I was like, well, maybe I didn't, but
Yeah.
then maybe I did because I watched it so many times on VHS and then DVD, later on. So, but Really, it was just because Muppets. I love Muppets. So anything Muppets that came out, I soaked it up. And when Jim Henson died, that sucked. You know, I was like, what's going to happen to my Muppets?
Yeah.
So it was just like everything that was coming out, though, was like, it seemed like around that time, everything they were doing was just like bam, bam, bam. There was really good stuff, including this for me, Christmas Carol, Treasure Island, all that kind of stuff. So, I was just soaking it up. So did I watch it in the theaters? I don't recall, but I did watch it probably 100 million times on media I owned.
Yeah. Yeah, it had stiff competition in the box office that season with Aladdin and Home Alone 2 also coming out. 92 was kind of a banger for the holidays. So I kind of understand it. I remember seeing Aladdin in the theater, so I know that's what happened to me, because I also remember leaving the theater. And my dad's always been someone who will complain about things. Like, he nitpicks the movie on the way home. But he was complaining about how many wishes there were or whatever. I distinctly remember being very frustrated with my father at that point, where I was like, you're ruining Aladdin for me right now. So I did not see it in the theater either. Adam, do you recall how you first came across this?
I definitely didn't see it in the theater. I would have been about 10, and I can't really recall the first time seeing it. It must have been on TV or, a tape or something that we just had around, because it was one of those that was always on at Christmas multiple times. And there weren't, at least when I was a kid, there weren't a ton of movies that we watched multiple times over the Christmas season.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Brown was one, Rudolph was one, Home Alone was one, and Muppet Christmas Carol was one. Those were on repeat throughout the Christmas season.
Yeah.
And it just, at one point, it was just there. And I don't remember well enough if it was a store-bought VHS tape or something we recorded off TV. I don't remember.
The good old days.
Yeah, exactly. We, a lot, and the copy of the quote unquote copy of Rudolph that we had was recorded off of TV from the late 80s. So it still had commercials for stuff. Yeah, exactly.
You didn't have someone who tried to pause it in between each commercial while they were recording and watching at the same time?
Wow. Yeah, but you'd still always get the first commercial and a part of the, because you don't know exactly when it's coming back. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah, so I did that with Daria. I had almost all the episodes of Daria on VHS, and I did that, Tim. I would wait at the edge of my bed, where my TV was, and I would hit pause and then hit record again. Yeah,
there you nice.
Go. Yeah. So I had a neighbor growing up, an elderly lady. And I don't know if you guys had this sort of thing growing up, but there's sort of a gift cadence in certain areas of my family. I had my Aunt Barbara, who would always just get us a Hess truck, right? It was just she's going to get us that year's Hess truck. And my next door neighbor would always get us a VHS tape, and we had to ask for it. She would ask my parents, what do the kids want? She's just a sweet lady. And at that time, 93, I was 9, and my sister would have been 6. So I was still in pole position. I was she doesn't know what's up yet. I can still dominate this ask. And so I remember getting that for Christmas and just binge watching it. And I remember wanting it. So I grew up watching Muppet Babies a bunch. Muppet Babies was a show that I was into. My sister and I could sit and watch. It was super fun.
Heck yeah.
And there was a commercial for this movie that had that scene, light the lamp, not the rat, right? Where he lights his tail on fire. And I thought that was the funniest thing. My sister and I cracked up at that commercial. And so we were we should totally get this. It's the Muppet Babies, but they're grown up and setting fire to things. This is awesome. And became a staple in our house too, although I don't know if you guys had these experiences, but also Nickelodeon played, pretty sure it was Nickelodeon, played a bunch of classic quote unquote Muppet movies. So there was the Frog Prince. There was Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. There was the Christmas Toy, which was like this little tiger. It was like Toy Story before Toy Story. It was all of these like made for TV ABC specials that were never theatrically released that I'm aware of. But they would play them. And so like we were also exposed to Muppets. Like there were some in there, but Kermit was always the narrator. And it was these like fun little stories, you know? So we had a love for it like built in early on.
Nice.
And it's stuck around. Like now that I have a kid, like we watch this multiple times every year for the past few years.
Yep.
So Muppet Christmas Carol, obviously based on the Charles Dickens classic, A Christmas Carol.
Yep.
Kind of dark, like kind of scary, right?
It kind of is.
There's moments.
There was that part in the movie too, where Rizzo was like, "Should their kids be watching this or something like that?"
yeah. They take off. They leave. He's like, "This is too scary. I gotta go. We'll see you at the end." Yeah,
yeah. And it's interesting because when you kind of look up the history of the early production of the movie, originally the ghosts of Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future, they were originally going to be well-known Muppet characters.
Piggy,
and I think even
Scooter.
Early on, Gonzo was in the running to be Ghost of Christmas Future, which is like that's supposed to be like that's the scariest part of the movie.
Right.
But you know, they decided that despite the tone that it needed to be a little bit more serious than that would have caused it to be, and ultimately correct decision. That it's just a story that does have some darkness in it, but I think that makes Scrooge's redemption arc all that much more impactful, because
100%.
if it's not, because without that, like, you know, fear aspect of it, like where does the transformation come from? Like, why does Scrooge make the transition from being the most, you know, Grinchly, for lack of a better word, Scroogely, terrible, greedy, cruel person to like, you know, being one of the most generous and kind-hearted people in town? There has to be something like major that happens. So I think it kind of needs that darkness as a contrast.
I think Michael Caine probably played off of that too a lot better with those characters they made rather than the Muppets. Probably he wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great actor. He probably could have done a serious role, even if it was, you know, Gonzo and Miss Piggy and Fozzie or something, you know.
Right.
But
it would have been a tough sell. It would have been definitely.
A tough sell. So, and I was just realizing too, when that movie came out, that I was 17. So I wasn't as young as probably it was meant for in some of those audiences. And I didn't have any kids. So, but again, I grew up with Muppets. So
never too old for Muppets.
Right. So I was like, I had to watch it. And it surprises me how well it sticks with kids who did watch it. You know, like you were saying, Adam, you were 10.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So because of the serious tones around those Ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. So, but for me as a 17-year-old and then watching it through my years, I liked how they did the Ghosts of past, present, and future.
Yeah, those puppets are incredible. Like, they almost make the movie. I think we'll get to it because this is Retro Groove. I would say the music is the star of this movie in many ways, but those puppets, like, it would not. I was doing the mental exercise of thinking what it would be like to have Scooter as the Ghost of Christmas Past, so that weird baby lady thing, that like odd amorphous puppet thing that's floating around with the baby face, and it just wouldn't have had the same effect. No. There was one critic who wrote about this. The critics weren't super nice to this movie. And the critique of it was they used the term lack of anarchy. They said, like, when you watch the Muppet Show and those early Muppet movies, because there weren't really that many Muppet movies, there were
No.
three like feature films before this: Caper, Manhattan, and the Muppet movie.
Mhm.
And anarchy's a good word. Like, there is this incredible chaos of what goes on backstage. That's the point of the Muppet Show, is it's a mess backstage. Scooter's trying to keep it together, but like sometimes it works on stage and sometimes it doesn't. And that was carried over to those movies. But when you think of that word here, it's not present. They actually decided to completely pivot on this. And it's crazy to say, because you think about the butterfly effect of everything, but it seems like interviews have pointed to the fact that part of that was because Jim Henson died right before this. Like, he died in 1990 and they decided to press forward with his son doing the film.
Mhm.
And look, like, he was the heart and soul of that organization.
Yeah.
They had just sold it to Disney so that he could take on a creative role. He was looking to like lean into this space and kind of go with, what was it, Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and all these other things that they've been messing around with. He was going to do even more stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he died suddenly, and his son, I think he was 28 at the time,
Yeah. Really
had to
young.
take up the mantle to do this. Like, that's going to put you in a little bit of a dark space. Like, everybody, everybody's friend, the person who you all knew who brought you to the party, is gone, and you've all got to show up at this place and perform and deliver. And man, did they have to deliver, because like I said, they had sold it to Disney. So there were expectations. This would be the first proper Disney Muppet feature film. And that will have its impacts, which we'll get into. But
Yeah.
there must have been a lot of stress around this. And I am kind of flummoxed, like, looking at it here from this side of things. It's kind of crazy that this happened. Like, you would think that they would just go safe. They would just try to recapture the magic of the early ones because they know they can do that. And instead, they make something completely different. They have Gonzo narrate it, like, with Dickens's prose for a good chunk of his lines. Like, that's crazy. Like,
yes.
Line for line, it's from the book. And then, these like really impactful puppets and moments. And then the other butterfly effect that happens here is Paul Williams, who, historically had done a bunch of stuff with the Muppets in the 70s. He did, he appeared on the Muppet Show. He wrote Rainbow Connection, which is an iconic song.
Yeah.
And then he did everything, wrote, produced, everything for Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has his own problems in the 80s of severe substance abuse. He drops off the face of the planet, basically, into his own problems. And he starts pulling himself out in the early 90s. And they come to him and they say, we're doing this project. Jim is gone. We really want you to bring what we had together in the 70s to this new, unique movie that we're making. And
insane.
Does he go ham? Oh my God.
Right. I mean, Rainbow Connection is timeless, but like, these songs they're incredible. There's not a single, like, in a movie full of musical numbers, you're bound to have one or two that you're like, okay, like, can we fast forward through this one? Like, this one hits on every single mark. And you touched on it real briefly, but man, just to drive home the point that, between Paul Williams kind of returned to form and just imagining the amount of weight and pressure on Brian Henson in his first featured directorial film, like, oh my God, like, how do you do that? And you've got Disney looking over your shoulder now. It's like, I can't, it's a miracle that this film was even made to begin with, let alone is like the timeless classic that it turned out to be. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also interesting. Again, like in most of the Muppet movies that I was familiar with, Kermit is the narrator.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I'm cognizant of at the age of 9 or 10, but like ultimately, when I look back on it, it would be weird if he hadn't been Bob Cratchit and he had been the narrator on this. Like, I think that
Yeah.
1-2 um, of Gonzo and Rizzo is such a great balance of the classic prose with that slapstick you expect from Muppets. Like they just really
Perfect.
struck that balance incredibly. Now, I'm not one for musicals either. I've played in some pit orchestras and I'll watch The Sound of Music, and my wife loves Grease, so that goes on sometimes, but like when it comes to films or stories that have these song breaks thrown through them, I tried to do West Side Story with her once. Like I got her tickets and everything, and I got through it. It was good. I could appreciate it, but I'm like, doesn't do it for
You
me.
don't go watching it 100 times.
No, like it feels
buying the soundtrack, right?
Yeah, it feels forced. Like it feels almost like superfluous. I get why it exists, like both as a vehicle and as an expression, but like musicals just aren't my thing. So I don't know why this one is. I mean, this is probably my number one Christmas movie. Like it's this or probably Home Alone. Like those are stiff competition, but like I don't know what it is, but I think it is that every song can really get you choked up. I mean, I rewatched this the other day with my kid and I started to cry and she kept looking at me like, are you okay, Dad? And I'm like,
right.
Tiny Tim. I mean, like, right. Tiny Tim.
Right.
Yeah. It gets
and to go
there.
back to Michael Caine too, for the way he acted in that role. I mean, it just blew my mind. And I'd like to think I thought this too when I watched it for the first time, was like just the seriousness of being Scrooge, but surrounded by Muppets when you're doing this is just, to me, just fantastic. And I could put him up there with all the other greats that have played Scrooge,
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Probably favorite Scrooge of mine.
Yes.
He plays it completely straight.
Yeah, scary.
And
so yeah.
He even mentions it. What's the quote here?
What he said to Brian Henson.
Yes, he basically came straight out and said, "Look, I'm gonna play this as if I was acting with the Royal Shakespeare Company. Like I'm not gonna wink at the camera. I'm not gonna adjust my performance at all because it's puppets. I'm gonna pretend this is a very, very sincere, dramatic telling of the Christmas Carol because I think that'll be the funniest choice."
Yeah,
and not only that, but like it has. Yeah, it's funny that he's having these very deeply serious, life-changing moments, and he's acting his heart out, and he's talking to a frog.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, it makes it so much more impactful as a movie. You get like the same feelings that you would get with like the most serious version of this story, because it's it's the quintessential Christmas story, and that shows his incredible skill as an actor, because you hear about people saying how hard it is working on a Star Wars movie where they're just like on this green screen set talking to someone in a green bodysuit that's going to be something entirely computer generated. Like that's got to be hard. But to like look next to you and see someone crouched down with their hand up the back of a puppet, the puppet has googly eyes, you know what I mean, and acting as goofy as possible, and you have to look them in their pretend googly eyes and not laugh and do a completely serious, heart-wrenching scene. That is like the pinnacle
for sure
of acting right there. So major props to Michael Caine, my favorite Scrooge by a mile.
So the movie kicks off with a banger, I feel like, right at the top. You get your introduction and you're immediately introduced to Scrooge. And that first piece, I think it's just called Scrooge, is like, it's haunting, and some of like the bass and like the lower parts and some of the brass, just kind of the staccato of it it syncs up with him on the cobblestones,
right? Yes.
And it makes you feel like you're swept up in this gray, cold fog. Like it so perfectly encapsulates the visual of what they're trying to portray. But then again, like, so you're feeling this like bleakness to this song, right? You're like going through, but you're seeing this like scatter shot of Muppets, some of the coolest like talking vegetables and the horses from Sesame Street, and
I'm being stolen.
And then so there's these little moments that would happen in our family. Again, we're watching this a bunch. Like, there's a point with those little mice. My daughter loves those little mice, man. Like, what? Like, that's Muppet magic. Oh my God. So their little no cheeses for us Mises, like little thing. Like, it's this like slight little shot of comic relief with sadness. It's still very sad. They're talking about how they're starving. Like, but it's so cute that like my mom would make me a sandwich and say it sometimes, like, like it was pervasive. Man, like where this came from Paul Williams.
There's this one part though through that song there where, like you said, they're panning through all these Muppets in these different scenes, right? There's one though where there's a frog and a chicken on a ledge, and the frog is pulling on the chicken. At least that's from my perspective, and I'm trying to figure out what it's doing. Like, why is it doing that? I mean, you could make some jokes with that, but I mean, it's not necessarily. It's pulling on its leg or its wing or something. So but I'm trying to figure out, why is that frog pulling on this?
Why's he tugging on a chicken? Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the Muppet. And
there's a cow hanging out a window too. So
right. Of course, because of course there is.
Right.
Like Muppet, the texture of the Muppet world and those non sequiturs make it feel so alive. Like, it makes you feel for these characters because one is getting their water splashed on them as they're singing, and then like a rat says like Scrooge is a jerk or whatever. Like there's all these little things that happen, and then they revisit those characters later on. Like they bring it right back around. So you're brought through that song. Scrooge gets to work. We won't have to go scene by scene through the whole movie here. But you get the sense of who Scrooge is. And through that,
quick too, is like
please.
when they're going through the Scrooge thing too, what I found interesting as well is they didn't show Michael Caine's face until the very end of that song.
Oh,
that's right.
I didn't notice that.
At least, it's what it seemed like.
I think you're right.
It was all, lower part because of Muppets, obviously. But,
you
saw his legs, you saw walking on the cobblestone and all that kind of stuff. But we really didn't see his face until the end. And he turns around and looks at everybody dispersing. Like,
and everyone's scurries.
Yeah.
So the song sets the character, and then you're presented with who he is, and it's Michael Caine, and it's genius. It clicks immediately. He looks the part and acts the part. And then you have your counterpoint rather, where Kermit is your heartfelt, throbbing, like you're cheering for this guy and you feel for him and you can commiserate. Yeah, he's exactly who you want in that role. Like nobody else would have worked for that.
Right.
And that song where he's dancing with the rats and the penguins, and it's just the
Christmas
adds,
after work party.
Yeah, but it adds this light. And what I kept seeing in this as I looked at how the songs kind of flowed, and it's interesting, there is a song that gets cut out at this point called Room in Your Heart. It's on the soundtrack, but it didn't make it through, and it was Bunsen and Beaker sing it after they get while they're trying to get money out of Scrooge. It's not like, it's fine that it wasn't in there. We were talking before, like they really left the killer in here, and I think there's two songs that hit the floor, three, but two songs that really hit the floor. that I think were the right call. Like didn't need the song there. But what you see is Scrooge kind of brings you down. One More Sleep Till Christmas kind of crescendos you back into that spirit of Christmas in your heart.
Yes.
And then Scrooge goes home, and this is where it first scared my sister. I remember that door knocker that screams at him, and go upstairs, and the ghosts show up, and they're shackled in chains, and they're yelling at him. And it's funny again. Statler and Waldorf are some of the funniest Muppets in existence. But
the voices kind of threw me off, but a little bit.
Yeah. But
you're
it's
right
scary.
though.
Yeah.
There is a very like just they did it so well because it's funny, but at the same time it is very ominous because and probably it's mostly coming from Michael Caine's acting because he's legitimately spooked. Like he doesn't know what this is for. He's seeing ghosts, and the way that they did it was genius. And they're
effects
iridescent,
awesome,
like you can see right through them, and it's really, really cool the way that they did it. But like Michael Caine is acting like he is seeing this happen. And we're laughing on one hand because it's Statler and Waldorf,
right?
But on the other hand, and they're cracking jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
But
the frostbitten teddy bears. Yeah. Again, it's so funny, but it's so bleak. Like
it's very
terrible.
bleak. Yeah. So it's just the balance is just very, very, very carefully.
Yeah. And even the chain boxes were Muppets too, which
I cool.
Oh yeah,
really cool, just them singing along and stuff towards the end.
Yeah. When he gets the chain put around him, like when that happens, like halfway through the song, and the chain physically goes around Scrooge, like that freaked me out too. I remember being like, Jesus, what's happening to this guy? And so then you're blasted to the past and go through some of that, and you get to the Fozziwig Party, which doesn't have like a feature song. Again, there was supposed to be a song in there with Sam Eagle called Chairman of the Board, which kind of, it's on the soundtrack. It celebrates and kind of reaffirms the business sentiment that was kind of beaten and valued. Yeah, that was really good. See, we're getting good Muppet
I do a good
impressions.
Sam the Eagle.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. It's the American way. It is the British way. Yeah.
Don't tip the driver.
Don't trip the driver, right? Such a throwaway line, but it's very funny.
Yes.
But you get to see Animal and Dr. Teeth, and they call themselves the Steam Powered Mayhem
instead of the Electric Mayhem.
Yeah, it's so funny. And it like that scene again, it brings you kind of back up. It's not a feature song, but it is this jovial, fun thing where you're seeing a lightness to Scrooge, and it's cadence with music. Now, the thing I don't know is, did Paul do that part? Because there was a composer that worked on this as well, Miles Goodwin, I think his name was Goodman. And the score, I think, throughout this is also gorgeous. A lot of it builds on the little pieces from Paul's songs, right? So you'll have those come back in that sort of perfectly Broadway, like Peter and the Wolfie kind of like,
especially the one song we're gonna talk about next. But yes,
but like the Scrooge motif in the beginning keeps coming back. Like when the ghosts come to visit him, it's like an oboe or something like that plays that little line that throws you back to it. But the Fozziwig Party is super funny. I love Animal. Animal's one of my favorite Muppets. And so it was cool that he was in there. Scrooge falls in love, and
young Scrooge.
Youngish Scrooge,
Scrooge from the past.
Yeah, Scrooge from the past falls in love. And it's with this lady who the actress is a Broadway singer from the UK. And they hire her to play this part of Belle because she can sing and perform. But if you went to go see this in the theater, you would never know that, because that song hit the floor. Like, it's this amazing moment in the movie where, again, you're brought up by the Fozziwig Party, and then you find out, guys, it is such a pivotal part of that movie. It is crazy because it is like, I think it's the final nail in what makes Scrooge. Like,
exactly.
he realizes he ruined it and he shuts everyone out. And in the current edit that you see in most places, like they break up and she walks away. It is nothing. And then Michael Caine's just crying. Like,
yes. That was such a bummer because I didn't watch the DVD I own. I watched it on Disney Plus. And again, we were talking as a pre-show, but on Disney Plus currently, it's the version that has that song cut out.
Yeah.
And it's so just like such a bummer when you know that song is there.
Yeah.
But also because it's missing, you can tell, even if you probably didn't know it was there, it's still, like you said, such a pivotal moment. It's like, okay, you get just from her walking away and all that, and that they broke up essentially. But it's not as impactful with that song there. Between that scene, the acting, and the songwriting and the score, all how much it hits later on throughout this movie.
Yeah.
That Love Is Gone song. It's like, I'm like hearing those bits from that song throughout the rest of the movie. I'm just like, I hope that person got visited by 3 ghosts.
That's fantastic.
When they decided to take that out.
Yeah. So, well, and I think Paul and Brian felt very similarly because it's not in the theatrical release, but I know that song because I watched it on VHS and it was included, not as an extra scene or whatever, but it was included in the actual film on VHS. And so I was shocked when I bought this digitally to watch with my kid a few years back. And I'm like, how did I miss this? Like, I didn't know that it had been ever cut out. And so I started backtracking and looking and trying to figure it out. And I remember Googling this a few years ago and being like, wow, it's just gone. They just legitimately took it out. And that's how it's been on the Blu-ray. Like any HD things beyond, I think it was the DVD release, the initial DVD release, it's gone.
Yeah. On the DVD that I have, it's one of those earlier DVDs that has where you can choose to watch it in 4:3 or 16:9 widescreen. And if you choose the 4:3, what they called full screen back then, that has the song still in it. But if you watch the widescreen version, that's got it cut. So, and I think it's still even on like in the deleted scenes, in the extras. And I know it's on the extras on Disney Plus. But yeah, it's, and it was weird to me too. I do remember the song from as far as, I can remember back watching the movie. So, I must have seen the VHS version initially. And so it is weird when later on, to me, it's similar to, and not to get too off track, but
sure.
Do y'all remember or know about the octopus scene in Goonies?
Oh yeah, when they say it on the beach at the end, where they're like, the scariest thing was the octopus, and the police officer's like, the reporter's like, the octopus. Oh my gosh! And I remember being like, man, I missed something.
He's just goofing, right? Like you think they're just like telling stories to the police, but but I remember the octopus scene being there.
What?
So it was like well, it exists. You can watch it on whatever version. And I'm going to say it wrong if I try to remember exactly, but I think it was because, the version of Goonies that we had when I was a kid was recorded off of like HBO or something. So it had the octopus scene in it, but like if you bought it on VHS, it didn't have the octopus scene, or if you saw it in the theater. So don't know why it was cut, but yeah, it not nearly as impactful as this movie, but referencing the octopus later in the movie when the octopus was cut out of the film. What it's
funny that was left in. Like like who missed
it's
that?
Weird. Yeah, at least edit the audio out or something. Yeah, because it's kind of a chaotic ending. But in Muppet Christmas Carol, it's like it's such a huge pivotal part of the film, like we just talked about. But they reprise the song later in the movie.
Yeah, like a bunch of times. Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know why.
So confusing. Yeah. I mean, the word is that, so like I said, they had sold the Muppet Company to Disney right
Right.
before Jim's death. Everything gets very murky. You have a bunch of Disney executives who now get a say in what's happening here. And there was a Disney executive who saw it and said, this is a kid's movie and this is too sad. It's too slow and we need to lose it. And he was obviously proven wrong. It's weird
Right.
that there's other stuff. I mean, there's legitimately the Grim Reaper, like walking around with the
Right.
guy talking about being dead, but like we can't. I like. We're okay with scary stuff, but like a little love song for a minute and a half is a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A legitimately frightening Grim Reaper as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Really well
Said
done.
when love is gone, bah humbug. Get it out of here.
So then you have a lot of uplifting stuff because the movie gets very dark. And so it feels like Christmas, is again like that pivotal moment with When Love Is Gone, where you see the change in Scrooge, where he's recognized why he became who he is. And then he gets taught by this like Santa looking Muppet who is so cool. I mean, the thing is like
Yes.
Hagrid, it's huge, right?
Yes.
He gets taught all of these lovely things, but then it ends on that sad note of like, if you don't change, Tiny Tim's done.
Yep.
He gets introduced to Tiny Tim there, and he falls in love with him. You have that fun little like scene with Kermit and Tiny Tim on his shoulder where Kermit's dancing, which that kind of stuff always blows my mind because I know it's a puppet and I don't know how they're making him work, like how they make his
it
legs.
Still blows my mind. Like
so
I know
crazy.
how they did it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter. Like it's still magic. Like
I
so
love
crazy.
the rolling thing at the bottom where their feet are just spinning or whatever.
Yeah.
Scrolling through the city or the town street. Yeah.
And then you have you're right. It is the street is kind of rolling, isn't it?
If you look at it, because that's what always catches my eye whenever I watch is that he's dancing on this rolling thing, but it's supposed to make it look like he's walking
down the street. That's so smart.
Magic.
So then you get Bless Us All, that like heartfelt Tiny Tim song, which that's when I broke down. Like,
yeah,
it was
of course.
just, it's brutal. And then the music's gone. It's all score. Like Paul Williams said, like, I'm going with Gonzo and Rizzo. Y'all can deal with this because this is some heavy stuff, and we're not bringing like lightness or brevity to the situation here. And it goes to a dark place for like 10 minutes, probably, like from the end of Christmas Present through Christmas Future.
It feels right though. Because Future is a dark ghost.
And but then the crescendo again, like riding your emotions, the crescendo of Thankful Heart. And then, like you mentioned before, Adam, the sort of reprise of When Love Is Gone, but it's When Love Is Found. And he's talking about like how great it is to find love in his heart. But if you didn't know that song, there's no context.
That's so frustrating, especially after watching it again. Just like watching it and then hearing that at the end, I was like, Jeffrey, why?
Yeah. It's very confusing. It's still a great song, but it loses, like, once you hear what song it is and how it's changed, it directly connects to what has happened in the movie. It is genius planning of a composer and a director and a storyteller mapping your emotions to the music that carries you along. And then at the end, so you've got the credits roll, and I don't know if you guys have sat through the full credits, but just like any other feature movie, you bring in a star to sing your hit song. And what hit song does Martina McBride come in and sing? But the song that gets cut from the freaking movie. So there's like a pop leaning ballad sung by her of When Love Is Gone at the end of the credits, which again, if you're in the theater, you're like, why is it gone? It's found. What happened?
You just found it.
You just found it. Why is it gone? Yeah.
Jeez.
So it's exciting that then we find out, because this has happened before, where original code for video games and clips of movies and stuff gets lost, or there's like that famous fire that happened where like the original master tapes of tons and tons of original of legendary albums got burned up a few years ago, and the artists still are just finding out about that. Like, it was so expansive that they weren't able to fully catalog everything that was lost. And there's still articles that come out now where you have a band that wants to reissue their classic album from like the 90s and finds out, oh no, it was actually in that fire and it's gone.
Jeez.
No fire at Disney. We don't know where they found it, but they found the original tapes, the original negatives, whatever they are of film, and have done a full HD restoration of When Love Is Gone. And I think as you're hearing this or close to it, like if you're watching it this Christmas season, I'll say, because I think they said December 11th, but who knows? You will be able to watch it in its full HD glory with the song in there. And I've never been able to do that with my kid. Like, I've told her about the song, I've showed it to her.
Wow.
But it's also like kind of disjointed, right? Like if she's seen the movie and then she sees the song, like it loses it. So I'm kind of excited to sit there with her and watch it again. Like, we just watched it a week ago. I'm going to hold off and we'll just watch it again with the full song in there. And it's going to be really cool. I'm very excited about it.
I can't wait. I'm glad you guys mentioned that. I didn't know that it was going to do that. So, or they were going to do that. So I'm happy that they're doing that. I'll be watching that again for sure.
Now, last year, and it's crazy to say that it was last year, but last year, Adam and I were posting in Discord because I Am 8-Bit announced a vinyl pressing of the full soundtrack of Muppet Christmas Carol, which had been out of print for a long time. It's gorgeous. It's amazing. It's just like video game vinyl at this point, where it's $160 to buy it now.
Right.
So it's a real bummer. I'm hoping I Am 8-Bit has been good about reprinting stuff. It's not like limited run or super rare where it's one and done. They have done reprints. I keep kind of hoping that for the 30th anniversary, you're going to see another pressing. So the only reason I bring it up is if that happens, it's probably worth it to save a little space in your wallet. Because obviously, like, as we've talked about, this is a really special soundtrack, a really special movie.
Yes.
And it's not easy to find a physical medium. And you can see, like, it's impacted. Like, that song is in here in the full run of the show. So if you listen to the LP, it's exactly where it's supposed to be.
Yes.
But you never know. Like, you when you get physical medium, you get it because you want to preserve things as you remember them.
Yes.
Yep.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Any other thoughts that you guys had on this movie? Have you watched it already this year? Are you planning on it?
Definitely watched it.
Yeah.
Like I said, if they re-release it with that cutout part, definitely. And probably even I'm going to have to go find the DVD box and find where I have that and maybe even watch it that way. So
there you go.
I haven't watched it yet. I knew that there was kind of this, I didn't know that it was going to be like a complete remastering of the whole movie, but I kind of still had in the back of my head that, okay, they're supposed to be adding the that When Love Is Gone back into, the full version and not just something that's tucked away in the extras. So I honestly was kind of waiting on that. But I definitely can see us watching it multiple times over the next few weeks. Hopefully that new release of it comes out sooner rather than later. But like I mentioned, previously, my daughter right now is all about Nightmare Before Christmas. So we've already watched that multiple times, and it's kind of cool because you know, there'll be parts in the movie, and my daughter will turn to me and be like, "Dad, how'd they do that?" Like, because she knows it's stop motion, but it's like, you know, is it Zero, the dog that's like a ghost? So she's like, "Dad, how did they do that?" And I legitimately, like, I actually don't know how they did that.
Magic.
So it'll be cool to watch it and see if, like, okay, like, what can they figure out? Like, okay, how did they do Marley and Marley? How did they do the Ghost of Christmas Past? That's all wispy, and like there were some notes about, you know, them filming that puppet doing its thing either underwater or in like a tub of
baby oil
or something like that, some kind of crazy method where they filmed it underwater or in some kind of liquid and then superimposed that onto the film.
Yeah.
And it's like crazy stuff like that. These practical effects that are really don't you know, they would just do it digitally now. Yes. And it wouldn't look as cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm excited to watch it.
Or they would have done the digital and then learn their lessons and then come back to practical, you know?
Yeah.
Like they have
we hope.
Yeah.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
So,
I think the other thing that I just think of with all of this is that Muppets and Christmas are very synonymous. Like this movie, obviously, but there's a bunch of others. Some of the ones that I mentioned already that aren't Muppets, but then you have Letters to Christmas, and there's a very Muppet Christmas movie. Like they've revisited that spirit this time of year a bunch of times, and it never has the same impact as something like this.
Right.
But I can see why it connects. Because, Tim, you mentioned Muppet Treasure Island, which I remember going to see in the theater because I loved Christmas Carol so much. I was like, this is going to be the same thing. And it's Tim Curry, who is fantastic.
Yes.
And
amazing.
It was a fun movie, but it didn't have the same chops. I mean, it wasn't Paul Williams' music. It wasn't the same kind of spirit as A Christmas Carol. And, you know, Tim Curry is a great actor, but Michael Caine approached this in a very different way. This movie, I love a lot of the Muppet movies, but this movie holds a really special place. I went back and I watched Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas last year, and I'll probably watch it again this year. My daughter really likes Muppet Christmas Carol, and so I was like, you know, there's another one with the same kind of puppets. It's just not those characters. And she didn't get into it as much. Like there was a couple moments where she bit, but it wasn't the same. And
it's a hard sell on today's kids.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up, and it's not. I mean, it's a fair amount older. It was the late 70s, so it could be that. But this 30 years, like this holds up.
Yeah,
like much better than a lot of things from the early 90s.
For sure.
This holds up really nicely. My kid is enthralled every time this comes on, you know.
For sure.
And I love Muppet Treasure Island very, very much. But like your comparison is spot on. Like the music isn't quite there. There's a couple bangers, but it's really not like the kind of thing where the music is part and parcel with the narrative and they all hit, you know, and the emotional ride that you're on is weaving in and out of these songs. It's not like that. But it's still kind of the same era of Muppets.
Yeah.
And so like both of those movies just really have a special place in my heart. I find myself watching Muppet Treasure Island throughout the year off and on.
Okay.
It is a favorite of mine, but it's hard to say like which one, like this stupid thing like they do on Twitter where it's like if you had to get rid of one, it's just like I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could do it.
Yeah.
But it would be almost impossible to get rid of Muppet Christmas Carol though. Like I think you have to keep it.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, it's not only is it just like fun Muppet, you know, goodness, good family wholesomeness, but it's like it's a legit, like, again, Michael Caine, one one of the, if not the best film version of Ebenezer Scrooge. But like, how else are you going to get kids interested in A Christmas Carol?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Introduction for sure.
Definitely. It's a favorite of ours.
I think what helps too, for sure, is that it is a Christmas movie, and there's a lot of people like us who put it in their rotation. So yes, it's going to be seen over Treasure Island, if you will, because Treasure Island isn't part of a holiday.
Yeah.
So it's, you're going to watch Treasure Island because you like the movie, and then, you'll watch it again. But where you're for sure going to watch Muppet Christmas Carol, most likely once a year, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. I think you should put it on Freeform. I think anyone who's listening to Tim right now, put it on Freeform. Like, if we can have 24 hours of A Christmas Story, and I love that movie, it does hold up. It's very fun. But if we can do 24 hours of that, we can at least, like, Harry Potter's on all the time. Like, you can throw on some Muppet Christmas Carol.
It's got to be part of some cable channel's Christmas rotation.
Yeah. Speaking of Disney, you guys over on FilmLogic just did your Pixvember features, right? So you spotlit 2 Pixar films, one of which I've never seen. You guys did WALL-E, I think, right?
Yes. WALL-E was the last one, for sure.
Really?
And then we did Incredibles.
Yeah.
So
Incredibles is super fun. Yeah.
Yes.
Never watched WALL-E.
WALL-E is definitely one that has some artistic feels to it that I feel. And plus, for you guys, Retro Groove, the last title song or the end credit song by Peter Gabriel.
Oh, don't even with me. I mean,
you gotta listen to it.
Yeah, he's on the wall.
Yes.
I didn't know he does it. Peter Gabriel does a song in WALL-E.
Yep, he does the end credit song.
Oh,
and the end credit song you sit through because they have an animation through the credits that tells what happens after that end of the movie. For the rest of the credits, it kind of tells more of the story. So you music fans out there got to at least listen to that. But it's a great artistic movie because, again, like we mentioned in the show, first 40 minutes of it is basically there's no humans,
right?
So it's all robots.
It's not dialogue, right?
So there's hardly no dialogue except for maybe a couple of, WALL-E words or whatever, Eve words. So, but yeah, it's fantastic. Definitely got to at least watch it once so you have an idea of where it's at.
I think I lumped it in.
List.
I lumped it in with Up, and I watched Up, and it almost broke me. And so, like, I was like, "Yeah, well,
it's
I'm not doing
Pixar
WALL-E.
movie. Of course, it's gonna break you."
Yeah, but Toy Story carries you through, like Muppet Christmas Carol. There's ups and downs in Toy Story. Like it's planned out.
Fair.
Up starts you off real rough, dude. Like that is the first 15 minutes of that movie. Like I don't even know how I watched the rest of it.
They give you another hour and a half to lift you up,
fun. So. Yeah. So FilmLogic on the Retro Logic podcast group network. And Nintendo Dads, I never miss an episode. You guys are fun. You're how I found all of this. Like I found Nintendo Dads, and then I found the Retro Logic, and then I found Adam, and it was a match made in heaven.
Here we are.
Here we go. Yeah, right. So check out Nintendo Dads.
Need another Kermit Yay.
Check out Nintendo Dads. Check out FilmLogic for your movie stuff.
As I always say, when we talk about all the shows and the family, the whole entire family, it's like besides the Nintendo Dads, you guys and the other dads that do shows, it's like there's something for everyone. It seems like in all of those the family podcasts. So
for sure.
Am I missing anything, Adam?
No, I think we're good. That's the only other thing I wanted to mention is y'all have a Christmas episode forthcoming for FilmLogic.
Yes, we're going to be talking about a couple of. I think we have a couple shows. So
some polls and
there's
live
a poll
in the Discord.
We'll probably be talking about the poll and then our own favorites, top favorites, and of course what the audience, listeners have their favorites. So
I feel like Die Hard's going to take it. Die Hard seems to always take it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll see.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
I've checked off a mark on my bucket list. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, the pleasure was ours. Thank you again for coming on and talking to us today. Thank you for listening to Retro Groove. We are part of the RetroLogic family of podcasts. You can find us on Discord on the RetroLogic server. You can also find us on Twitter at RetroGroove_pod. And I guess there won't be an episode companion playlist like we normally do. Just go listen to the Muppet Christmas Carol soundtrack
and go watch it.
Go watch it. That's your homework. That's your episode companion playlist for this episode. Let's go watch Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Merry Christmas.